The title of this video is called Batman, or How I Learned to Start Fantasizing and Forget Christopher Nolan. Now, for anybody who's watched Stanley Kubrick's Doctor Strangelove, that's a play off of that title. And I think this is a very important video because it's been a long time coming, and I really just want to go into talking about Batman as a character, because there's a lot there that hasn't really been explored with the films, and a lot that we have to keep in mind when we watch these films. There's a certain type of fan out there that if a movie's being made from a comic book, they're in bliss and they're happy just because they're a fan of that comic book and it's going to be a big blockbuster and mass audiences are going to watch it. But for the hardcore fans out there that were comic book fans when picking up a comic book meant going to a small little comic book shop that nobody was going to frequent from high school, except for the fans. That was a different time. And I would argue that our sensibility of the characters before any of these films were made, you had Batman 89 and you had Superman, but that was really about it. But our consensus of the characters was pure because we didn't have these films. And a trend started to emerge with these adaptations led by Christopher Nolan, but also Bryan Singer with X-Men, where there needed to be reasons and explanations and a realistic adaptation of these fantastical characters. Now, that's flawed from the get-go. When you set out to adapt an intellectual property, whether it's a comic book, whether it's Lord of the Rings, whether it's a novel, whether it's an anime, adaptation to me isn't the only thing. I don't want to see homage. I don't want to see nostalgia. I don't want to see Zack Snyder making a 300 film that's pretty much essentially the same 300 as the comic book. Adaptation to me is the first step. You want to authentically adapt the intellectual property as a stepping stone, and then you want to end with innovation. You want to adapt the source material, but you want to innovate while doing it. And these films, I'm sorry, they're not innovation. Now, maybe they're okay adaptations, or they're bad adaptations, or they're great adaptations, but that's about it. None of them really adapt and innovate. And most of them like to put things through the realism lens. But if you're going to look for realistic explanations for every little thing in a comic book, an obviously unrealistic and imaginative fantasy creation, then you are a moron. Or you are at least going to have a very, very hard time with that endeavor. And the more you do that, the more chiseling away, the more inch by inch, brick by brick, detail by detail, or as details go, then you are destroying what makes that comic book character so great in the first place. And people will say, well, Nolan did a great job and made a great movie. Maybe that's what general audiences would say. General audiences who, one way or another, don't know or don't care much about Batman, the character, and never did. But if you are a Batman fan, in any interpretation really, a Batman fan, in my opinion, cannot say that what Nolan did with Batman the character over the course of 3 films is not flat out infuriating and embarrassing. But it is an embarrassment. When Batman Begins came out, I had to explain to a group of friends who were in shock, guys and gals, that Bruce Wayne is the mask and Batman is the true identity. That is left in the aftermath of Bruce Wayne losing his parents in Crime Alley. That Batman Begins had gotten that right, and that was the comic book character in a valid interpretation, and Batman Begins is still a valid interpretation. But so I don't take that for granted that Begins did do that and accomplish that after coming off of Batman and Robin. But the thing is, what came after and which was The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, when it comes to Batman, is a travesty. When I'm talking about the character, it's a funeral. I mean, literally, for a beloved character and a disrespectful heist. To me, Batman is not just a story, not just a character, not just a movie. It's not just kids' stuff. I mean, to me, Batman is myth, modern day legend. It's in the blood of who I am today, etched in my psyche and emotional and psychological development from a young age. I mean, my subconscious mind from a very, very young age and tender age of 10 years old. And jolly good job with Bruce Wayne in Batman Begins and Dark Knight, Christopher Nolan. But considering Bruce Wayne is just a mask, just a facade, a facade, just a paper-thin impression, is that what I'm supposed to care about? Or am I supposed to care about Batman, the Dark Knight, the Caped Crusader, the world's greatest detective, Vengeance, the Knight, the Bat, Batsy? Come on, man. I mean, let's be honest. Let's be real. Coming off of Batman and Robin, Nolan was a sneaky snake. There's a difference between taking an adaptation of a character seriously and respecting the source and adapting it, and then even better, innovating with that adaptation in an inspired way, and just making the source material realistic in a condescending way while you deconstruct the character. Let me ask you this. Riddle me this. Does it suit the character of Batman to be realistic, or does it suit Christopher Nolan for the character of Batman to be realistic? I'll wait 3 seconds. It suits Christopher Nolan. And all the talk in Batman Begins interviews from Nolan of, I want to honor Batman, I want to be respectful of the character, and so on. And you can go back and look at the clips. It's all bullshit. Yeah, did you make a respectable film? Debatable. It's an okay film. But in no way did you respect the character, the construct of Batman. That's BS. Who can look at what Christian Bale did with Batman in The Dark Knight and what Nolan did with Batman in The Dark Knight Rises as anything but disrespectful? Bruce Wayne does not retire from being Batman as if it's just some job, as if it's some chore, some burden. Bruce Wayne's end goal is not, I want to find some way to hang up my cowl so I can just jet set and enjoy my life in Europe. Bruce Wayne is nothing. Bruce Wayne does not exist. The life of Bruce Wayne is not a thing. The only thing is Batman. Batman is the only thing. So it is, and I mean, that's the thing. The thing you explore is Batman. The thing you develop, the thing you adapt, the thing that makes these comics books successful is the construct of Batman. For Nicholson as an actor, Joker was the thing. For Burton as a director, Gotham City and its freaks, including the eccentric billionaire Batman, outside loner, was the thing. For Schumacher, the Batman and Robin partnership and the Bat family as a unit was the thing. For Nolan, and this is a fact, when you watch his trilogy as a whole, 3 films, and at the end of The Dark Knight Rises, he makes this an emphatic and undeniable point. Bruce Wayne is the thing. And you have a film called The Dark Knight Rises, and the ultimate end goal of this guy, your Batman, is to carry a bomb across the skyline of his city, Gotham City, so he can shrug his job responsibilities as Batman for someone else to potentially pick up the cowl so that he can enjoy jet setting in Europe, his pleasures in Europe. He is leaving his city, his cowl, to some kid, I don't care if it's Robin or whoever, with absolutely no training, so he can enjoy Europe. That was the ultimate goal. The process of being Batman is the goal. I'm sorry, Batman is the only identity that matters for any Batman fan. Being Batman is what he loves to do. Being Batman is his gift, what he is good at doing. Being Batman is his calling. It is not a job. It is not a burden he hates. And it is just waiting so that he can give it up at the first opportunity. It is the thing. And in this video, I'm going to set out to deconstruct Batman as a character. Point number one, pain is his pleasure. Let me repeat that. Pain is his pleasure. Pain is this man's life, inflicting it and receiving it. Does he tire? Of course. His mind and body might every now and again. Sure, he is human. He falls down. He gets broken. There is a poignant drama there to be mined. This being human. You show the fragility of the human condition and the heights to which he pushes it. Drama is about contrasts, characters that are foils. Human nature is about contradicting needs. We have a need for variety, we have a need for familiarity, we have a need for significance, we have a need for anonymity, we have a need for love, we have a need for a certain disconnect and individual space. So you need a starting line to get us to see how amazing it is when we're going 120 miles per hour. That's why you show his fragility. You don't show his fragility because it's realistic and he's a human being and this is how we relate to him. No, you show his human fragility. So when he does the extra human amazing things that he does, we see and realize just how amazing it is. His will is the thing. His will is the night, undeniable. Control of Gotham City and everything and everyone in it is the thing. Order is the thing, not just any order. His order. There is no order being restored by the GCPD or Gordon or Dent or anybody else. The reason? Simple. This is not a story of Gotham City. This is not a story of our human condition in society. This is not a story of the police department, about the court system. This is a story about the psychology of this character construct that is Batman. He is trying to gain control of everything because he lost it when his parents were shot in Crime Alley. He is trying to gain order because there was chaos in the streets of Gotham City that night. Sure, in various streets, as this is one of the most crime-ridden cities of all time. But what's relevant here? For this story, and again, I'm talking about a story and the psychology of it and the realistic logic of a story, because I'm going to show how Chris Nolan's supposed realism is retarded. For this story, we're talking about the chaos that creeped into young Bruce Wayne's life that night, into his billionaire picture-perfect world, and not only took the life of his parents, but changed his life, and took his life as well, if you want to think about that psychologically speaking. Bruce Wayne was shattered that night. His ego was destroyed, split into various personas, or, the number one persona, which is Batman. This, my friends, is a story of what Jung called individuation, the thing of any proper Batman-centric story. It's trauma, abuse, coping and coping mechanisms, the human potential of one's will. It's psychotic and obsessive drives and the limits of a man, the limits he can break to immature and impossible degree. This is a fantasy, and the limits that may or never will be broken. Ego, my friends, and fandom family, is as Carl Jung describes it, the center of the field of consciousness, the part of the psyche where our conscious awareness resides, our sense of identity and existence. This part can be seen as a kind of command HQ, organizing our thoughts, feelings, senses, and intuition, and regulating access to memory. It is a part, or the part, that links the inner and outer worlds together, forming how we relate to that which is external to us. Batman is this man's ego. Without Batman, Bruce Wayne does not interact or socialize with anyone in any real or tangible way in the outside world, because there is no Batman. In a Gotham City where there is no crime, I'm going to use an example here so you understand the logic. Let's say in a Gotham City where there is no crime, where there are no villains, on the day when no such thing can ever happen in a city called Gotham City and never will. Picture this. On such a day, and think about this hard for a minute, on such a day, Batman is the one that you would find locked up in the mental asylum that is Arkham. And he would be in a Gotham City where no such supervillains existed or ever will exist again, Arkham's most dangerous and most psychopathically psychotic prisoner, a PTSD, insanely trained, delusional, and hallucinatory soldier and martial arts human weapon. Unstoppable one-man army killing machine that would be a murderer because he would be killing innocent asylum co-inhabitants, and God forbid if he escaped, which would be very likely as he would escape multiple times, then go on to kill multiple innocents of Gotham. Ultimately, and this is a hypothetical, but I'm showing you the construct of where the character comes from. Because character is action, and action is character, and the character of Batman is what reflects, and we have all these amazing supervillains, we have this Gotham City, and we have all these characters in the story world. It all starts with Batman. So I'm showing you a world where I'm taking out the reflective elements that are shining off of the Batman character, and I'm putting the Batman character in a world where all the elements except for Batman are the opposite, so you can see more extremely under a fine scope magnification the construct of this character called Batman. Ultimately, to where the city, this Gotham City, where there's no drama and there's no supervillains, would have to answer the very classic moral dilemma of the death penalty, and injecting this man, this Batman, to put him down and out for good for the harm he is causing others as a serial psychopathic murderer, by chance you ever did catch him for long enough to do that, as he would, and rightfully so, be the most dangerous person alive in Gotham City. This may all sound very unrealistic, but I am going to prove to you how this is even more logical and story-driven and realistic than what Nolan did by, in his words, making Batman realistic, that he thinks is so brilliant, but really exhibits the story and dramatic understanding of a 5-year-old, as he did the opposite. And not only has his trilogy made the character and psychology of Batman unrealistic, but let's take it a step further, because that's what he did. He took it a step further. He made Batman and Batman psychology and dramatic through line of a story positively non-existent. For those keeping track at home, I was given Batman comics when I was 10 years old, during a traumatic time in my own life, my own young life as a lad, and when everything was chaos. So to say that those Batman comics helped to shape me and influence my existence as a man would be an understatement. It would be a severe understatement. I'm simply hammering the point that PTSD and a lot of other psychological profiles and conditions are very real conditions and aspects of human life. And for all of us as infinitely unique people and personalities, as historians of the human species, my father was a Navy SEAL. So although I do not know of anyone, of course, that has gone on a murderous killing spree like what I've described above in my hypothetical situation with Batman, and what I am describing is extreme for a reason, which I will explain in a little bit. But I do know and can tell you PTSD is very real and is an important thing, not only for soldiers but also for anyone that experiences post-traumatic stress disorder, whether rape survivors or anyone who has experienced a very difficult psychological situation or emotionally speaking in this thing we call life. Batman, I would argue, along with PTSD, should also, in most likelihood, besides having PTSD from the murdering of his parents, be a paranoid schizophrenic. And let's add in a wee bit, shot of narcissistic personality disorder, as well as a side of some masochistic traits, and hell, let's chase that down with some sadistic tendencies. Cheers, mates. Bottoms up. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Okay, let's talk dramatic, logical, realistic, and yes, Nolan's most hated word, fantastical story. This is a 10-year-old boy who saw his parents shot right in front of his very eyes in Crime Alley with no warning, and all of a sudden, no, he was not killed with his parents, but for some reason, unbeknownst to him, he was left alive. The sole survivor of this horrific and tragic event played before his very young and insanely privileged life. Now, this boy, who for sure is psychologically affected, with all the billions and billions of dollars one could imagine, and nobody but a butler at his side, goes off for years of training only money can buy, and he becomes a master martial artist in multiple martial arts, and not only trains his mind to become the world's greatest detective, but also his body, his emotions. He learns all sorts of things a soldier or a KGB agent or Hell 007 can only dream of learning, from criminal profiling to forensics to the Houdini family secrets of escaping impossible situations, dislocating limbs, shoulders, the timing of one's breath, the ability of one's lungs to hold one's breath, to the efficiency of movements. He learns languages, body language as well, manipulation, hypnosis. He studies with ninjas, and on it goes. Guys, use your imagination and be as fantastical as you would like. This man's time from such a young age is endlessly given to this endeavor for which he has a never-ending supply of funds, of being Batman. Now jump forward. For this man to not be the scariest thing you ever did see, and for Alfred to not be the worst guardian ever, and positively insane, as this young boy in his case, in his care for so many years, especially at the very beginning of his young life, then this character of Batman cannot, and most certainly must not, be living in a Gotham City as the one I hypothetically described above in my extreme hypothetical premise. Because if that was the case, then Alfred would be the boy's first victim. And the body count through the years would only go up from there, making Batman maybe, if not probably, the worst and world's most prolific serial killer. Guys, here's where story logic begins. For this to make any sense, the city of Gotham has to be as fantastically extreme as the comics present it to be. Because if it was how I present it to be, if it was realistic and supervillains like the Joker and Two-Face and Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy and Catwoman and all these characters don't exist, and it was the real world as these films portray, that would not make any sense. The city of Gotham City has to be fantastical. The villains have to be fantastical. It has to be an extreme, because the supervillains cannot be delusions and paranoid schizophrenic hallucinations that we are seeing from Batman's head. They have to be real. If those characters are paranoid schizophrenic hallucinations from Batman's head, Batman is the villain. So they have to be real. That is the only way Alfred lives and makes sense as a character. Because if it was the opposite, Alfred would be the first victim, as the closest thing to this delusional, psychotic, neurosis-obsessed, traumatized young boy that has all the funding, martial arts training in the world to become a human weapon. That is the only way Alfred lives and makes any sense. That is the only way that Batman lives. It makes any sense. That is the only way this story is as balanced as you see it in the comics as it is, and why it is functional as anything other than a horrific tale about the world's greatest serial killer. That is why Batman, as a character and a construct, is will embodied, always will be, and he always will be in a never-ending war. That is why Batman is not a job to get out of as soon as you get the chance, and that is why Batman in Nolan's trilogy is not only non-existent and unrealistic, but a part of a story that has as much imagination and drama as an accountant has when auditing spreadsheets of profits and losses. Nolan was a huge mistake, and I wipe my conscience and memory clear of his Batman, because my God, what a disgusting aftertaste. Yes, I said it. In the morning, in the AM, I said it. Cinema and art is factually defined as an imitation of life. It is not life. What Nolan did with Batman was a travesty, but let's not talk about Nolan. Let's not even mention him. From now on, I will be referring him to as the one who shall not be named. Fuck it. Just gonna call him Voldemort. Okay, less Voldemort, more Batman. Let's talk about Batman, the comic book character. And let's get some other guys that have touched this character into the metaphorical ring to duke it out. In the left corner, weighing in at 130 pounds and standing at a lanky 6 foot, in black trunks, black shoes, and with black gloves, with unruly black curly hair and the most obnoxiously large black glasses you ever did see. The eccentric string bean jelly bean that got his start in the same Disney castle. They made a mouse an international superstar and global phenomenon. We've got Tim Burton. Round of applause, round of applause. He's probably going to make it 3 seconds before seeing the floor at the end of a TKO. Controversial statement. Burton's Batman has better fighting scenes in 1989 with a limiting but gloriously dark and sexy looking suit than Voldemort's Batman did in the 2000s with a pencil neck, bulbous head, and way too busy and in too many parts of nasty looking batsuit, which Voldemort, in all his pretentiousness, said was for better mobility during fight scenes, in which he could barely keep the camera steady or in focus enough for us to get any kind of sense of what fight scenes he is talking about or captured. And for the times where he did capture the fighting, we have Bale realistically grunting and wheezing and heaving punches at Bane, one after the other, like a lumberjack trying to cut down a 1,000-year-old tree with his tiny axe, of which will never happen in his lifetime. Oh my Lord. I can't make this stuff up. I'm telling you, Voldemort's Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises gives you more comedy gold to mine when it comes to the character of Batman than Schumacher's Batman ever did, because Voldemort is presenting his pile of doo-doo as a masterpiece. And I am sure, with stern countenance, I would defend it so seriously if I was Chris Nolan, as such as would his fans. But hey, Schumacher's Batman might have been a wee bit too fabulous, but at least it was not highbrow, nose-raised, pseudo-intellectual, pretentious, and in an insidious manner. Let's go back to Burton. Burton's weakness was the fight scenes, but that was a product of the suit at the time, and him being the first to do this in the late 80s. Burton's Batman still kicks ass, and despite his limiting suit, still outperforms Bale's Batman with all the nasty, disgusting, look-thin Atkins diet Batman suits he cares to fill out. With the most strained Batman voice and performance you ever will see in the late 2000s in a galaxy far, far away. Good God, thank God it's over. A dud is a dud, ladies and gentlemen, is a dud, and Bale's Batman is a pile of crud. Great Bruce Wayne, but let's get serious. Enough focusing on paper cups and billionaire playboys. Muscle. Let's turn our gander to cod pieces, nipples, and butt cheeks. That's right, friends. We're headed to Schumacher land. Batman Forever and Batman and Robin. The fabulous Schumacher was not wrong. Surprising that no one points this out, but I'm going to get deep in it, and thank God a gay man got a hold of Batman for 2 films so I can make this brilliant point. I myself am straight, but this is going to make sense. It's going to make a whole lot of realistic sense. Only Schumacher would focus in on these elements, and I'm about to get into it. So it's 1995, and the fabulous Joel Schumacher is thinking nipples, cod pieces, and butt cheeks. People will howl and gawk, but he was right. Execution was flawed, but again, he was right. So what in the blue hell am I talking about? Let me explain. No other media showcases the awe, beauty, and inspiration of bodybuilding and the symmetries of the body and its form, male or female, than comic books. The ancient Greeks were aware of this physical beauty, and unlike our modern-day society, there was no shame, no guilt, or insecurities about our physical bodies, or the ideal standard of physical sculpture, perfection, and prowess, of which today we'd probably just call bodybuilding. But back then, it was etched in stones, granite, in awe-inspiring and fantastical marble statues and busts. Today we see it in sports, magazines, ordained with models, bodybuilding, porn, and of course comic books. I am talking about the human form. The comic book genre demands, and I say it requires, that a pencil-thin Bale-esque Batman shall not pass. Batman Forever has some of the best shot movements that we've ever seen an actor in a batsuit do on screen, and I mean while looking fabulous. Val Kilmer as Batman is flipping and dropping through glass, a la Keaton's Batman, and fighting. And folks know Batman has moved as well and looked as good in film, except for Snyder's Batfleck since. And oh yes, we're going to get to the brilliant Snyder. Don't set the alarms. It's an oxymoron. The brilliant moron that is Zack Snyder. Yes, we're going to get to him soon. Snyder's Batsuit, just a little appetizer, is hands down the best looking in every way. It is flawless. Fact. That is a fact. And best moving during fights. And thank God that Batman just fights and doesn't do some retarded things, like Bale's and begins with brilliant lines like, "How about this?" or "But I don't have to save you." Yes, we've got the Martha line with Batfleck, but in hindsight, I remember it vaguely being pretty funny. I just can't buy Bale in his fights, and with that, with what he is saying and in that voice, although the fighting and movement of the suit is good in Batman Begins, but gee whiz, Voldemort's camera did an abysmal job of capturing any of it, or any sort of fighting properly. So what was the point from our logical, realistic director? If I have to rank them, I should say, and on the visual look of the suit combined with motion and fighting mobility, then I'd rate it like this. Snyder first, Schumacher second for Batman Forever, not Batman and Robin. Batman 89, followed by Batman Returns, and then of course Batman Begins. But hey, back in the 90s, and second only to Snyder's Batman, is Joel Schumacher's sexy looking and flawlessly moving batsuit that Val Kilmer wore during fights. Go figure. You don't need a pencil neck and bulbous bat head cowl to turn and move efficiently. You don't need a suit that's so busy you can barely even see the tiny little bat symbol in the breastplate. Or I'm sorry, in the chest section, because that's some horrible design with Bale's batsuit in Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. All elements of the batsuits in the comic books are simple. How is it simple? Well, look at the bad ones and look at the good ones. What makes the bad batsuits bad? And what makes the good batsuits good? What separates the good art from the bad art? What distinguishes your favorite Batman images or illustrations? An appreciation of the human body, bodybuilding. The good batsuits, whether it's gray and blue, blue and gray, black on black, whatever color, it could be red on yellow, I could give a shit. It would still work because the principle is not the colors. Look at any good Batman illustration. Here's what it is. They're very simple. You have the ears, longer or short, doesn't matter. You have the cowl, whether you can see the eyes or you have the whites, as some comic books and interpretations and the animated series did. Doesn't matter. What matters? The neck. The traps in the back. That's what it is. That's all it is. All it is you got the cowl, long or short ears, you got the eyes, whether it's piercing eyes or white silhouette. You've got the neck. From the neck to the shoulders, right above the center of the chest and the collarbone. That has to be a singular piece. That has to be a singular bust. The cape can drape from there, from the back as you look at the traps and, the shoulder outline. And that's it. As long as you have from bat ears to right along the top of the chest bone, as a silhouette, shoulders, neck, traps, back, collarbone. You get that in a bust, you get that as a one piece. From there you can do whatever you want with the cape. You can do whatever you want with the suit. You can get rid of the cape, it wouldn't matter. That's the core element of any good bat suit. Don't believe me? Go back and look at some of those Batman illustrations. Find the ones you like. They all have it, with whatever other variation. So what Nolan did, or Voldemort did, with the Batsuit in Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. Whew. God bless him. So Val Kilmer's Batsuit in Batman and Forever, it looked good. He went a bit, Schumacher went a bit too far with the eroticism. He got a little too excited, depending on who you ask, with the nipples, cod pieces, and butt cheeks for mass audiences, and even for an extremist like me. I'm even saying a bit too much, Ma, a bit too much. He should have removed the nipples, cod piece focuses, and butt cheek camera zoom-ins and pans. We get it. You like butts, like Tarantino likes feet, but maybe, just maybe, Batman taking the time out of his day to put nipples on the Batsuit isn't the best approach, or very much necessary. That's like Bale trying to intimidate and lecture criminals with speeches. I swear I can't make this stuff up. Your boy Batman does not waste his precious time on speeches. Too much to do, too little time. Doesn't talk much. Bale's Begin suit honestly rates just as high as the others, but that voice and those lines of dialogue during fights drops you to the last spot, my friend. Thank Voldemort. Okay, I'm leaving myself wide open here to pot shots and low blows. Time to get my hands up, shift off the films, and step forward with my good foot and some Batman comic knowledge. You ready for some little storm body blows, hooks, and uppercuts? Brace yourself. Visually, I'm going to take it to another hypothetical place. Batman's body should tell you a story in and of itself. Fact. How much time he's put into it. How many miles. Every burn, scar, cut, bruise, and dislocated bone. How much more developed his muscle, bone structure, and definition through martial arts is than yours. How inhuman his body is. And how pushed way past any human potential it is. I'm going to go out on a limb, push it to an extreme, just so you get the point. It should be grotesque and awe-inspiring at the same time. A defined Himalayan mountain of a bod. Have the actor get in shape, best shape he can get into, then filter it with some CGI, add in some practical prosthetic effects. I don't care how it's done. Batman's body has to be so extreme that whenever he is next to anyone, it should jar you as a viewer in comparison. His body should be handled like a character in the film itself, like you are watching a mountain move with speed, grace, and vicious strike efficiency of a snake. Wide boulder-shaped shoulders, V-back, and deep-set abs that make any bodybuilder or anyone else that's played Batman look like an amateur. Get the actor in such insane shape and do the finishing touches with prosthetics built into the suit, then CGI filter it to go the extra mile. My God, picture it for a second. Not very realistic, is it? But it sure makes a lot of sense for this story, doesn't it? The goal, my friends, is that every audience member, when they see Batman in a suit or out of his suit, should be thinking, my God, this isn't human. This is scary. Oh my God, he is human. How is his bone structure shaped that way, like that? The width of his shoulder and his back, it's grotesque. You should be thinking, my God, this man has done unnatural things to his body, developed his bones and muscles and fighting style in such a way that it is perfection for fighting, but an unhealthy extreme for living a life or anything else. You should feel the pain in this man. His body has gone through. You should feel that pain, either during his war and crime or his obsessive will misshaping it to his purpose and goals. Arnold Schwarzenegger should be thinking, watching it, man, I wish I had this Batman's will and this visualization in my bodybuilding career, or that this was humanly possible in the real world, because it's not possible for the body to do that. But my God, there he is, and he's done it. I can see it now. That grotesque body, formidable and imposing, made so only by a mind so deranged and so compulsively, obsessively focused and controlling, with a neurosis to such a degree that you think, my God, this man is scary. This man is dangerous. He is unhinged. He can't be that wide from his waist. It doesn't look right. His neck and trap muscles are so extreme, like a wolf's rising, and the back has its teeth and its head come down, and it bares its teeth, but permanently so. Almost sort of like a hunchback, like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And yes, oh my God, did he just dislodge a bone to move his back and headbutt that guy standing behind him? I think I'm gonna throw up. Oh shit, his head just snapped. His trap's back into place. This is not right. I gotta turn away. I can't watch this fight. Yo, but I can't look away. This is insane. His protruding jawline is insane. Is that a metal plate in his jaw? Is his whole jaw a metal plate? I think I can see the scars just under his scowls. Oh my God. I'm going to throw up. Guys, we're going to go places you would never think we were going to go in this video. I want you to visualize just how, and for archetypes, just how visual storytelling works, and how far Batman can go as a construct, and how we are still, and very optimally so, at an infancy here when it comes to Batman in film. There is a real life bodybuilder named Michael Hearn, for anybody who doesn't know him, look him up, that believes in a style of bodybuilding based off of blunt force trauma that a lot of bodybuilders don't do, for a simple reason that they can't possibly bear it without injury. It's an extreme. He's not looking to just look good. And the reason he wants to do this blunt force trauma type of bodybuilding training, which is a combination of bodybuilding and powerlifting, is he wants to do neurological damage through years of training to build his strength and muscles that much more. But he lives to not just exercise the muscle. He lives to traumatize his joints and bone density and everything in between. Folks, Bruce Lee, combined with this bodybuilder named Michael Hearn, would look as scary as what I am picturing for this version of Batman. I'm just illustrating to you where different elements of the construct that is Batman can go in an extreme sense, so you get the point, but also how Batman has been so severely lacking as a character in a construct from these adaptations for the most part, especially the more recent ones, these so-called realistic portrayals. Because they're not realistic of the character and construct that is Batman. That's a fact. You see, in Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, they don't even come close. Hell, if I had to, I can imagine an adaptation where You don't see the reclusive billionaire Bruce Wayne, but only Alfred answering the door. And every time you see Batman, of which hell could be 90% of the screen time in this hypothetical, and that whole time you're thinking, I really hope this filmmaker doesn't show me what he looks like outside of the batsuit. I don't want to see him outside of the batsuit. Then you see him for 10% of the film outside of the batsuit in his cave, and your jaw falls to the floor speechless, as there's so much story written on his body and hidden under that suit that you would never dream one could survive. I know, it's truly fantastical, right? But it makes sense. Let me expand your minds a little further. This man's body has been through ungodly things over and over and over and over again. Mangled, pulled apart, torn, burnt, cut, crushed, dropped, and so on. And yet when we see this man, we are supposed to believe this is an efficient, enduring, strong, massive, and insanely quick, malleable, and impossibly flexible, dislocating body, contorting like a contortionist and supplemented with tech and metal plates and surgeries from God knows the wonderfully skilled surgeon Alfred, who learned his skills from Thomas Wayne as a brilliant billionaire doctor, surgeon. Playing almost mad scientist, Alfred is, at his Frankenstein monster Batman, tragically trying to preserve what he can of his little boy, Bruce Wayne. Even as year after year and as the years go by, he sees Batman developing more and more like a grotesque Frankenstein hunchback monster, one that is needed in this Gotham City and scary, as the thought of he wasn't needed because it's gotten to such a point that now this man can no longer fit into society in a functional sense. His body would no longer fit in as Bruce Wayne. As the years go by, he would become more and more reclusive from damage to his body, but also from the extremes of the training he's pushing it to and countless surgeries and billionaire technology that only he could have. And again, for those that think it's unrealistic, Schwarzenegger talks about this realistically with his own body, of how when he bodybuilded to such an extreme and created his body, people would literally look at him and say, I would never want to look like you. You are so extreme that it looks ugly. And he would respond, I wouldn't want to look like you. But my point is that he pushed his body to such an extreme that he stood out in society. It was not a normal thing. Batman's body would be even more extreme. Keep that in mind when we're talking realistically and we're talking logically based off the construct of this character called Batman, which does not exist but is a fantasy. See, you can start a trilogy, and there's enough here to what I am saying that after 3 or 6 films of this, or this hypothetical approach, you can explore some horrifyingly deep themes. Human nature, obsession, sacrificing oneself to a greater cause or ideal, the damage as human beings that we can have done to us, the damage we can do to others, and that we can do to ourselves, physically, emotionally, and psychologically. This is a man, you can tell, paid a price. If Terry McGinnis ever picked up the cowl in a Batman Beyond film to the point where he respects this man, this Batman, aging Batman, immensely, he would be in shock and disbelief to what this Batman did and continues to do as he trains himself, fully aware that he himself, Terry, is not sure if he can or ever wants to get or give as much as Bruce did. And yet the war is still not over in Gotham City, and Terry McGinnis must now pick up the cowl and continue forward for all Batman ever did to ever truly mean something, or to get close to a peace ever existing in this Gotham City. The story would require that, because having been saved by Batman as a youth and seeing Batman I don't know, save his mom from rape or some other situation, and him from being killed as a young boy in Crime Alley, much like the parents of the young Bruce Wayne himself. The body of Batman is a story unto itself. At any point, whether he's beginning as a Batman character in his youth and he doesn't have the training, so his body goes through significant ungodly damage those first years, to the point where he is now a martial arts expert and nobody can barely touch him, but his body is an extreme through years of training, trauma, and surgeries and billionaire funding, to the point where it's Batman Beyond, and now his body shows you the price that he paid in his life as Batman. Yes, my friends, even the body of Batman has more story logic in what I am telling you in this video than what Christopher Nolan did with 3 realistic trilogies. You don't make a fantastical character realistic and bring it to our world, because art is an imitation of our world. It's never supposed to be our world. We go watch films to escape our world. I read comic books as a 10-year-old kid to escape the realities of my world. That's what kept me sane. That's what kept me going. Because I went through some things as a kid. So I find it positively disrespectful. And guys, at the end of the day, for character, what are we talking about here? This is a soldier. This is a man who straps up for war every day of his life for a lifetime. This is a warrior, well-funded, endlessly funded, and world-class trained, ancient trainers. The knowledge is with this man. The knowledge is with Batman, for his teachers have died thousands of years ago. Martial artists, Houdini himself, the Houdini family secrets, and the byproduct. And yeah, I mean, Batman is the byproduct and hypothetical child of Zorro and Dracula. This is a detective, a fighter, an agile runner, an Olympic-class powerlifter. This is a man of brilliance, a Renaissance genius, and a psychopath. He is the bad and the good of the coin that is obsessive neurosis. I want you to think about all these things not as the be-all, end-all film or my specific interpretation of Batman. You know, I said the title of this video is Batman, or How I Learned to Start Fantasizing and Forget Christopher Nolan. And after watching Dark Knight Rises, I was so embarrassed, and there was such a bad taste in my mouth. It was so traumatic. Batman fan, standing ovation for a character that you see getting deconstructed and obliterated out of existence on the big screen in front of a mass audience. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more at the end of this video. It was such an harrowing experience that I myself picked up the pen and wrote screenplays for Batman. It was therapeutic. I had to write my own Batman screenplays just to get that taste out of my mouth. It was a coping mechanism, my friends. You know, when I was a young child, my coping mechanism was escaping through films and comic books. When I saw the characters that, like Batman among others, that were so precious to me, deconstructed on film, as a writer, my coping mechanism became, okay, I gotta go write my own Batman story because I have to escape the reality of what I am seeing on the screen. I have to go into my own fantasy now. I have to fantasize about Batman and write my own interpretation just to get my head back in the right place. Because, folks, there are fans that if you show them something and convince them well enough, they might believe that what you're showing them is right or what you're showing them is great. But what Nolan did with this character that was not his, that so many great writers worked on through the years, constructed, and that's why a character is called a construct, because it's not real. Sorkin talks about this. Characters are not people. Dialogue is not real world conversation. It's a construct. Batman was constructed through the years through multiple writers and deconstructed by Nolan in 3 films. Disrespectful. But I want you, at the end of the day, a video like this, I want you to think about all these things, and I want you to consider how dense and deep the source material is here, because it is. It's all larger than any cookie cutter interpretation, but the key, and this is key, is that this is from the start and has always been and will always be a fantasy. Whatever interpretation, left or right, you take, up or down, Batman will never be realistic. And Batman does not exist. It is a story of fantasy. It has elements of us in it, but it is not us. Batman is not us. He is a character, a construct. Characters, they don't speak real conversations like we do. They speak dialogue. We don't speak dialogue. We never will in our lives. These are all constructs and have always been constructs. And the Batman that I am presenting to you, or Batman with all his variations and developments as a construct. I watched this construct of Batman destroyed piece by piece in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises under the guise of what was called realism. So by the end of it, you are now watching the death of Batman on film, and all that's left is Bruce Wayne vacationing at some cafe in Europe. Factual statement coming, folks. This is Michael Caine's story. What Christopher Nolan did accomplish, because I could play devil's advocate. I don't like what Chris Nolan did with the Batman character, but I could be objective. At the end of the day, what did Chris Nolan do? Well, let's look a little deeper. He deconstructed Batman. He gave you an okay paper-thin Bruce Wayne for what Bruce Wayne is. Bruce Wayne was never a construct. But what Nolan did do, what he, so to say, achieved, is that over 3 films he told Michael Caine's story, Alfred's story. This is Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. It's not a story about Batman. It's not a story about Gotham City. It's not a story of Harvey Dent. It's not a story of the Joker or Bane or Commissioner Gordon. It's the story of Alfred Pennyworth. This is his arc. This is Alfred's goal and dream for the young man that is Bruce Wayne. This is the lack of interest and disrespect and ignorance Voldemort. All right, let's just call him Nolan. This is the disrespect and ignorance he has when it comes to the character of Batman. Nolan hates Batman. Batman was an obstacle to him making these films from the beginning. But hey, the Batman brand is good money and is what it is. So little by little, if he could chip it away over 3 films, he could stomach making this trilogy. But fact, whatever you may think watching Batman Begins, when you leave the theater after watching The Dark Knight Rises, you are embarrassed and angry as a Batman fan. At least I was. Why? Because Nolan hoodwinked us right under our noses. In the 3rd act of The Dark Knight Rises, you start to realize how this pseudo-intellectual, pretentious a-hole got away with murder. the murder of the character that is Batman, the construct that is Batman. There will be those who argue, well, Batman could be anything, and this was just an interpretation, and a good interpretation, and I like this realistic Batman. Correction. There is no Batman here. Wearing a Batman suit does not make you Batman. Adapting a Batman film does not make it Batman. This is a story. This is an interpretation of a story or an imitation of Heat, the film. As such, it is an okay film. Listen, mate, take the Batsuit out of this film, Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, take the character of Batman out of this film that Christopher Nolan directed, and have this guy named Bruce Wayne, just because of some tech-supported wealthy billionaire funding with a mentoring butler, and not only do you have a better film, but you'll have my respect. I don't respect Christopher Nolan. I have not watched a Nolan film since The Dark Knight Rises. The man is a clown. He was making a point here, a statement, and as a Batman fan, don't patronize me, don't exploit me. What you are selling, my friend, is pseudo-intellectual bullshit. You don't like the Batman character, don't use him. You have balls, you want to be a stand-up guy? Better to adapt Bruce Wayne and Alfred, make it your own, and quit calling this a Batman story. Quit calling this a Batman film, because it is not fact. Not in a million years is this a Batman story. You Nolan supporters out there, pick any comic book you want to prove your point. I'll pick any comic book I want to prove my point. We will get nowhere. Because I understand subjectively and interpretation is a thing, I get it. But through decades and decades, there is a construct and a psychological profile of this character called Batman. And mates, I don't know what anybody out there is smoking, but Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises contain a systematic and flawless exploration. Scratch that. Exploitation and deconstruction of the character of Batman until he is no more. Sad, real sad. But I no longer have any desire to see any film with Nolan's name on it. Last one was Dark Knight Rises, and I have never in my life walked out of a theater before the mass audience left their seats. But I was fuming. I've fallen asleep in a theater during a movie before, but I've never left a theater fuming with anger, embarrassment, and disappointment, and shock and awe. I was crushed. I also never think that will ever happen again. That is a special honor and accomplishment reserved for Christopher Nolan. But folks, I've been a Batman fan since I picked up a Batman comic book when I was 10 years old. I saw Batman 89 and Batman Returns after my exposure to the comics, and not before. For me, it all started with reading Batman comics, and I was born, for those that want some background, in 1989, the year Batman 1989 came out. The comics came first for me, so they still do and always will. Nolan did not do great things with the character of Batman. Hundreds of comic book writers did great things with the character and story of Batman. Fact. Let's be real here, mate. Who is Christopher Nolan but a director that got to make a high-grossing and earning, well-received, highly accepted, and praised film because of the character of Batman existing before he laid his ignorant or conniving and pretentious, I know better than you comic book fans who would read childish book hands on it, because that's the perspective he took when he adapted this material. In his mind, he was making it respectable. Take whichever side you want. He did not elevate Batman. He spit on Batman and had his way with Batman. Sure, Schumacher destroyed Batman that film in a way no mass audience member was on board for or condoned, but it was blasphemous. But Nolan publicly lynched Batman, and the mob that is general mass audiences praised the death of a character I have loved since I was 10 years old. And I watched this happen very, very publicly, with cheers and clapping and standing ovations right in front of my eyes before I left the theater, mourning and furious. Yes, it's just a movie. Yes, it's just a comic book. But seeing as how this video is about the character and construct of Batman, your point is mute, sir. Fuck off. For the Batman fans out there that agree or disagree with me and have some debatable points, sure, I'll take you on. but you won't change my mind, not in a million years. Nor do I seek to change yours. But for those Batman fans out there that felt similar to how I felt watching what Nolan did with Batman, or let's just say I feel you, bro. I feel you. This is my video entitled Batman, or How I Learned to Start Fantasizing and Forget Christopher Nolan. The villains in Batman's world must be extreme, because Batman is extreme. Which filmmaker has done this the best? Tim Burton. Because in Tim Burton's world, the villains are extreme, psychological profile wise and visually. His Gotham is extreme, architecturally and visually, the atmosphere. So therefore, his Batman is extreme, and it all makes sense because it fits within that aesthetic. In Christopher Nolan's realistic world, the extreme visuals of Batman and the idea of Batman do not fit. So Bale comes across as a regular guy in a regular world that might be wealthy and have technology, but he doesn't come across as someone that's smart. He doesn't come across as someone that has extraordinary will. He doesn't come across as someone that's in insane physical shape. Actually, in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, that is the skinniest Batman we've ever had. He comes across like a guy that's playing dress up as Batman for Halloween. In Schumacher's world, it's not as visually atmospheric as Burton's, but it is visually atmospheric. So Val Kilmer's Batman fits in. It's just that Val Kilmer in that film has the personality of a wooden board. Is he a pretty boy? Yes. And for the fabulous Schumacher, maybe a pretty boy Batman is what he was going for. Well, Val Kilmer at the time in that suit fits the role. He's a pretty boy Batman. Flat as a board. No personality. So that's what you have to realize about the character of Batman, is that why did I make that hypothetical situation where there were no super villains, and they're called super villains for a reason, not just because the personalities are super fantastical and extreme, but the visuals are also extreme, and the fantasy elements. The fantastical characters in Batman do more to show you the strengths of the Batman construct than the less fantastical characters. Mr. Freeze makes you realize how much of a tragedy Batman's life is. Clayface makes you realize how much of a tragedy Batman's life is. It also makes you realize the great physical extremes that Batman goes to defeat these extra fantastical characters, both with Freeze and with Clayface. Same with Poison Ivy. When done right, it makes you realize how extreme Batman's will is over the other gender and the sexual Aphrodite type goddess that is Poison Ivy. Joker makes you realize the neurosis and obsessive insanity of both the Joker and of Batman as chaos and order. Now, although Nolan's Batman tries to hint at that at a very surface level, because it got the Joker part of it with the chaos and Agent of Chaos in a way right, but it didn't quite understand the Batman part of it. Batman part of it wasn't the people of Gotham will show you order, and Dent will show you order, and I want to give up being Batman, Harvey Dent has fallen, the White Knight, and all this type of stuff. And it's not about Gordon. It's about Batman saying, I am going to show you my order. You are in my world. I will dominate you. I will destroy you. I will put you away. I will rule. That's what the Joker and Batman dynamic is. It's will. It's the Joker's will towards chaos and saying this is my way and there is no way. And Batman saying no. It's my way and my way is the only way in my city. You see the difference? Now, because Nolan's world was such a realistic world, and because his Batman was so absurd in that realistic world as a guy playing Halloween, his Joker ate that film alive. Dominated over everybody. Batman, Gotham, Dent, Gordon, everybody. His Joker was a one-man army, one-man show. That was the whole film. For that reason. Because Nolan's construct of Batman, his construct of Gotham City, were imbalanced. So his Joker ate everything alive. In contrast, Tim Burton's world, and let's not talk about Batman Returns, let's talk about Batman 89. It was balanced. Batman did not eat Jack Nicholson's Joker alive, and Jack Nicholson's Joker did not eat Michael Keaton's Batman alive. They were balanced, and it was a much more accurate adaptation of that relationship from the comics than Nolan's could ever hope to be. And now that I've gone through the explanations of it, maybe you understand a little bit of how off the mark Christopher Nolan actually was. Batman's villains need to be fantastically extreme. That's the only reason it makes sense that Batman, the construct of a character, is as extreme as he is. It's a rock and a hard place. There's a dramatic concept in screenwriting called the spotlight effect. What is the spotlight effect? That is, well, who is your titular character? Your main brand. In this case, Batman. That is the title character of these comics, of these films, of these adaptations. So, to showcase the construct and the character of Batman, the screenwriting technique that you would employ for any character, but you would also employ for Batman, who has one of the best rogues galleries ever, because he's one of the best characters ever, is you put Batman, the character, in a dark room. Metaphorically speaking, the dark room is the screenplay. And as you go through the screenplay, or as you go through the film, or as you go through the comic book story, or as you go through the novel, or the poem, or whatever format you take, you look at every character that Batman meets as a spotlight onto a different aspect of Batman's personality or the construct that is his character. Joker spotlights this aspect of Batman. Harvey Dent aspects this Batman of, this aspect of Batman. Poison Ivy aspects this aspect of Batman, and so on and so on and so on. As if as if when you shine this spotlight on Batman, a shadow comes off his side, and that's one side of his personality. And when you shot this spotlight on Batman, this shadow comes to light, peeling the layers of an onion. Doesn't work any other way. And let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the roles of Batman and Alfred. In The Dark Knight, it's Alfred that's giving Bruce advice about the nature of criminality, and Bruce can't comprehend how to understand the Joker, and it's Alfred who has to tell Bruce, some men just want to watch the world burn. I'm sorry. That's just incorrect. But like I said, The Dark Knight Rises, Nolan's trilogy, it's Alfred's story. Now, to give you a comparison, in Tim Burton's Batman Returns, it is Alfred who is telling Bruce, maybe the Penguin is just a circus freak or an orphan boy looking for his parents. Maybe you're looking a little too deep into it. Maybe he is just a poor soul. and you're wrong to suspect him. And it's Bruce who won't let go. It's Batman who won't let go and says, no, there's something else. Something sketchy. Because that's the character. If there's a character that's going to be paranoid, if there's a character that's going to be suspicious, if there's a character that's going to know criminality and criminals, it's Batman, not Alfred. You want Alfred to know something, give him the surgical skills that were passed down to him through Thomas Wayne. Give him the doctor skills that he has to over and over and over employ on Batman to keep the man alive. That's what you give him. But you don't make Alfred the expert on crime and criminals. That's Batman's MO. More so than anybody. Batman's the one that should know criminals better than Alfred knows criminals. He should know criminals better than Gordon knows criminals. He should know criminals better than anybody in Gotham knows criminals. Why? Because his whole life has been dedicated and obsessively given to hunting down, understanding, and stopping criminals. I mean, you look at these things and then you see people that defend these movies and defend these trilogies because of the realism aspect, and I'm sorry, but that's not enough. There are things with the character of Batman that are wrong in so many ways, and we have to talk about them, because if anybody's going to adapt the Batman character, the Batman construct, we might as well get on the same page about what the Batman construct is. We might as well debate and discuss how it differs from one another, how we look at it differently, but what the core elements are in everybody's version. And Batman understanding the criminal mind and the criminal presence in Gotham more than any other character, that's fact. I'm sorry, that's fact. It is not Alfred who dedicated his life to understanding criminals. It's not Alfred who should be giving criminal advice to Batman. Now, if you want to have Alfred giving Batman advice on how to live a life, how to have a life, and how not to completely go over the deep end and be nothing but Batman, then yeah, Alfred should be giving that advice. So, just an important point I wanted to hit, and we talk about Batman. Batman character should be embodying a couple traits, and you don't see any of these traits in The Dark Knight. You don't see any of these traits in The Dark Knight Rises. You see some of them in Batman '89. You see some of them in Batman Returns. Batman Forever. I can't even really say if you see them because it was so campy, and Val Kilmer was just so dull in the role. I mean, but let me say this though. When I think about it, and this might be controversial to some people, but it's not to me. Bale is one of the best Bruce Waynes. That playboy billionaire, that drunk billionaire, the womanizer, and the guy that's a rich boy, the son of a wealthy businessman, and doctor, philanthropist that, spends his life away and, is nothing serious, and, just a guy that drives fast cars and that type of thing. Bale did do that better than anybody else. And you can do that. You can play Bruce Wayne that way. You can kind of play Bruce Wayne like he can play Bruce Wayne, which is this guy that's just very reclusive, aloof, a little bit odd. Nobody knows much about him. Same type of thing. I mean, it's not every day that everybody gets to know a billionaire. I mean, they do tend to be more reclusive, sort of say. But let's talk about Val Kilmer's Batman and Christian Bale's Batman. Now, I don't have as many of these issues with Christian Bale's Batman in Batman Begins, but they really do become issues in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. Might be controversial, but if you were to ask me, between Val Kilmer's Batman and Christian Bale's Batman, which one's less offensive? I'm sorry, but to me, I'd rather watch Batman Forever and watch this dull, boring, Val Kilmer Batman than watch Christian Bale's Batman. To me, Christian Bale's Batman and that voice is just such a laughing joke, because they're obviously taking it seriously and they're obviously missing the mark by a mile. Now, Val Kilmer's Batman does less, But in in doing less, like think about a baseball hitter, you know, swinging hard and missing so hard on a curveball. That's Christian Bale. Now think about Val Kilmer at bat, and you know, maybe he steals a base and then he's out, but was it exciting? No. Was it the most miserable failure in the world? No. Did he try that hard? No. So you kind of look at it and you're like, no opinion. But Christian Bale's, he swings hard and he misses hard. And that is hard to watch. Some people like to watch that. People like to watch train wrecks just because of how, you know, when there's a car crash on the side of the street, people stop and look. It's that type of thing. Me, I don't want to look. I mean, not when it's Batman, not when it's a character that I want to see done right. No, I don't want to look. So let's talk about the traits of Batman. Will, extraordinary will, pushing past human limits physically, emotionally, and psychologically. An intelligent guy, world's greatest detective. Uh, Understands the criminal world. He's very controlling of a city, of the people around him. Obsessive. He has a neurosis. There's a different gradient of how paranoid you want to make him, but he should be suspicious of things as they seem. He should be a student of human nature. He should be capable, more capable than anybody. When there's a horrific situation, the guy that you should want on the scene is Batman. Forget the GCPD, forget Gordon, forget Dent, forget Alfred, forget Gordon Levitt or Catwoman, forget anybody else. The guy you should want on the scene is Batman. Batman 89, when Batman comes on the scene, his presence is felt. Batman Returns, when Batman comes on the scene, his presence is felt. Batman Forever, when Batman comes on the scene, it's sort of felt because you had the partnership dynamic between Robin, who was going off the mark, and then Batman would show up to kind of reel him in. So even though, Val Kilmer's performance was middle ground, you did feel some kind of presence because of the way it was written and the dialogue between a partner and someone who has experience and someone who doesn't have experience was written in that way. Batman and Robin, as campy and absurd as it is, you definitely know when Robin and Batman are on the scene. For God's sakes, they're on roller skates, ice skates, fighting with hockey sticks. There's that scene where they're chasing Freeze at the beginning, and they're going on through space and through the air and all this stuff. So you know when they're on the scene. Is it outrageous? Yes. Is it campy and you can't help but look at how ridiculous it is? Yes. But do you know when they're on the scene? Yeah, you know when they're on the scene. With Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, and Begins, when Batman's on the scene. There is a presence there. And if Christian Bale played it another way, or he was at least directed the correct way, I have no doubt he has it in him. But in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, when Christian Bale's Batman ever comes on the scene, whenever he's making a speech, it's a joke to me because I look at the guy and I can't take him seriously. His fighting, he's not, he's facing people like the Joker and Bane, and his fighting is abysmal. Like, even the mentality of the fighting, especially with Bane, and you really start to see it with Bane, is abysmal. Like, you don't get the sense that this guy is a martial artist who knows how to fight. You don't get the sense that this guy is intelligent. You don't get the sense that this guy knows the criminal mind or criminals. And you don't get the sense that this guy has anything under control. What you get the sense of is that this is a guy who's very wealthy, has very unique and effective technology in some instances, and he uses that technology to do what he does. That's what you get the sense of. But, it's got to be the most inept Batman I've ever seen. That's not what Batman should be. Batman, you should get the sense of this guy can vanish when he wants. He does impossible things. He's a master manipulator. He's an effective human weapon. He's a psychological character. He's a brooding character. He's a silent character. Batman does not give speeches, ever. Batman does not ever give speeches. You want speeches, give it to Death. You want speeches, give it to Gordon. He's got to raise the morale of the GCPD at every villain should have his speeches and his moments. But Batman, that's a character that even if a character is talking to him, in moments should be dead silent. Should just be looking at him, at the character. It should just be a stare. Like, this is a character that will ignore people. This is a character that will not say anything to people and talk with his fists and talk with his body. This is a character that when you are talking to him and you turn around, he's gone. He's not even there. This is someone that does not give a shit, whoever it is in his city, to be giving speeches. He just doesn't. That's just not, to me, that's just not the MO. And when you look at Batman, I just don't understand how that's not seen. It's really a fusion between Dracula and Zorro and a shadow. Like one of the things that I always argue, and this is one of the reasons I always want a visual director moment of visual storytelling when you see the Penguin's umbrella dragging Catwoman through the air because she rejected his advances, ultimately to where she falls to her death. Visually looking at it, that's the Penguin's umbrella. Visually looking at it, that's Catwoman. You don't need dialogue, you don't need exposition, you don't need anything. You can look at it and you can see. That's why visual storytelling is powerful, and that's what the comic books have as their strength. That's where these characters were created. You can't look at the medium these characters come from, these comic book characters, and not see the visual element because that's what they were born out of. So you better use that as a filmmaker, and not drag it into the real world like Nolan did. So yeah, just a couple points there.